Hello, this is Steve Powers. Today I'm going to talk to you about composition. Um, in this case, I'm going to use this example of a fantasy landscape and talk about how I actually came about devising it. Um, in this case, I did start with a little bit of inspiration, a whole lot of imagination. In this case, I started with a character. Now, the character was a very basic character. I had the pose. I sat it down on a plane. It wasn't a pair at all, so it made a little bit more sense. I had the feet dangling. This is pretty much the characterization of it. The arms I had sitting beside it wasn't really doing anything until I decided to put in a fishing pole, and that's when this became a pair. Uh, So from that, it's and what I mean by starting with a little inspiration, I started with this one little section of this. Nothing else was in my mind. I didn't know what I was going to do. It could have been at a beach. It could have been at a river. I knew it had to be water. Of course, you have a pier and a fishing pole. So from there, I mean, I didn't even have the facial features. I had this scraggly little hair in the face. I changed a whole bunch of times. Hence, that's where racers come in handy because what you're doing is really experimenting. That's the imaginative part. And actually, I think that's where the fun starts. You start with a little bit of inspiration, see how far you can go. And this way, I mean, yes, you can have your failures because it won't produce anything. But in this case, there's no predetermined outcome, so it's very hard to fail. And so when you start doing things, you just start expanding from this um, and putting down. I'm just really dealing with the foreground or the midground, excuse me, where I started putting down the planks. Now this starts telling the story too. If these were all individually spaced out and there was nice, neat pairs, there's no character there. There's no real story there either. But it would tell me that it's new. So it could be new. Okay, I'm on a new pair. But in this case, I tend to go for weathered, lived in environments, something that is, I think, uh, projects a story. And from there, my imagination starts taking off. And but these elements of these planks, well, they're all going out. They start establishing your horizon line because they're all starting to um, I mean, they'll have a different vanishing point on the horizon line just because of the, just because of the structure of them, of the individual planks. But as we're going about, they're turning just a little bit towards it. And of course, from there, I did expand it over to here. Um, I established a beach line back here. Wasn't sure what to do out here. I could actually still draw in more, but I think having this kind of stuck in the mud and some of the trash floating will tell you how deep this water is anyways. And all of it is to tell a story. But as you're adding these things, you do have to think about a basic lighting scheme. Where's the light coming from? Is it front lit, side lit? I tend to do right and left. In this case, this looks like it's almost top lit, and I'm not adding a lot of value and shading in here because I predetermined I was going to paint whatever I sketched. So this is actually watercolor paper, a hot press watercolor paper. Simple 2B pencil, mechanical pencil. Everything is drawn with this, and I have used my kneaded eraser to take out this background so many times. Um, and that's another thing to talk about in your composition. You don't have your basic focal point, in this case the character. From there, it expands out. You have your foreground, your midground, and your background. I guess you can go further background too because the sky is probably going to be some kind of muted blue. Maybe I'll put a couple of the colors in there to maybe capture that the air is contaminated, what have you. He is wearing a mask, a respirator, and goggles, and kind of looks like he's in some kind of protective suit, maybe protective boots as well. But forced to eat fish with three eyes out of water like this. Now this, and that's all these elements add to the story. You have a sunken ship here. You have a couple cans, and this is to use this. Believe it or not, not believe it or not, but if I make it smaller back here and larger up front, which it would normally be, that's adding to your perspective. Um, Things are gradually getting pushed away. Frankly, this should be darker than this right here because this is in the foreground, and everything here is going to be the darkest darks, and uh, the saturation of the colors are going to be more up front than in back. They're going to fade away with that atmospheric perspective as you go through. Now, granted, this is an illustration, this is fantasy, but we still want that sense of reality. We are used to seeing things in the distance that are the colors are muted. There might be a blue haze over it if there's moisture in the air. In the case this case, you would have moisture in the air, um, and it's also going to have less detail, which is an advantage for artists. We don't have to do much more than to add value to establish the different lines. Like I put in these trees in here. I'll probably pick up some of it, of that graphite, before I go to paint with it, because I don't really need the lines to delineate the between the different trees. I can use color. I can use, in most cases, just the value, light against dark, dark against light, to give you the shape. You know, value change equals form change. And back here, this was another continuation of this type of um, environment as well. So having the elements repeat will help with that perspective, will help with the story. There's a lot of that creates a continuity with the trash up front here and some trash in the back coming around here. Your eye will follow these different elements, having a bend to the uh, rod itself and making sure that line is straight. That actually adds a little action in there. So these are all parts of your composition. Now you don't have to have all of this. I mean, I could have just done a very simple scene where it was him and the fish and maybe a little bit of water, what have you. But in this case, I took it as far as the edge of the paper would allow me to. So in the end, this you want your composition to tell a story, to make people um, interested in what's going on. Maybe they have questions about it. This can be used as, in most cases, a story starter, in the sense that from here it raises a lot of questions, and that's where you get that involvement from that human aspect of the viewer. Those questions can be answered with more pictures, or you can turn it into actual story. This could be the front of cover of a book. This could be, you know, about this world that this person lives in. So, in the end, composition should tell a story. Well, hopefully you can apply this to your own work, and you have a good day. See you next time.